blatant rebellion.
Hello everyone, you're watching Hashtag. This is Timothy David Galbraith, and today I'm going to bring a interview to you that I just conducted with Lapeer County Commissioner Scott McMahan. He has a lot of thoughts on the flock camera situation that's unfolding. I don't want to go too much into that because, well, the interview speaks for itself, but it's a for sure uh, hot button topic in our community right now, and it's going to only intensify. I'm hoping that sometime in the next couple of weeks I can put together a live stream that will enable people to call in. Maybe I'll schedule a couple of guests ahead of time, still working out some of these kinks technically, so I'm confident in my ability to do these things and not waste anyone's time. But I am excited about this particular interview. Before though we go to that, I just want to point out that there is a event coming up in Metamora. You'll see the flyer on the screen, and I'll put a link below. But it's a euchre get together for the Serenity House, which is a good cause. It goes to helping people in recovery, and that's February 5th, I believe, between 5 and 10 p.m. So this upcoming Thursday. I intend to be there myself, at least for a little while. I don't know how to play euchre, but I still look forward to being there, supporting a good cause, and maybe hopefully meeting a few of you. So with that said, let's go to the interview with Lapeer County Commissioner Scott McMahan. Right, today I'm joined by my guest, Lapeer County Commissioner Scott McMahan, and he has made it quite clear, I'd say, publicly, that he has strong views about the flock cameras, and that's what led me to reaching out. I was really interested to hear that. I think the whole community is interested to hear a little bit about what's happening with that. So first off, thanks for joining me, and please tell me what's happening with that.
Timothy, thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk about it. Yeah, I do feel strongly about it, but I think it's really because I have a intellectual opposition to it, more than it's not just my feelings. I believe that our our liberties are really largely based on the preservation and the protection of our privacy as citizens, and I think that flock cameras, the installation of flock cameras is the beginning of a very slippery slope towards a total surveillance state, and I'm opposed to that.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you're familiar with things like Palantir.
Yes.
Okay. Is that kind of like where your mind goes, and that type of direction? Because we're seeing some wild stuff when it comes to police state type technology being proliferated out there.
Yeah, I think that really my my opposition, where my mind goes, is the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay.
And the implementation of a complete and total surveillance state that they have there in China, and they use that in order to control the population.
Yeah, they have like a, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's really so yeah, I'm definitely familiar with Palantir and the way that they aggregate data, and that they're aggregating data between agencies. And my concern is that we can't fundamentally, and perhaps we should step back and talk about exactly what these cameras do and don't do.
Yeah, please.
But fundamentally, my concern is that that agencies outside of this county that we have zero ability to hold accountable and that have no transparency would have access to our data, as far as where we live, where we work, where we go to church, where we play, whatever we do, and where we go out to dinner, where our kids go to school. And it could be argued that they already have access to this through our cell phones, but legally they're not supposed to have that without a warrant. And the Supreme Court has ruled that even if they do have access to that information, which is arguable, we don't know whether or not they do. It appears that that the NSA probably does. or at least they have, and I doubt they would have relinquished it. But so what these cameras do is these are cameras. The proposal that's in front of the county commission right now is to install 24 of these cameras at a
Oh, wow.
cost of about $440,000 over 5 years.
Okay.
And that includes primarily that's like rental and subscription to a web service, a web-based service that the sheriff's department would use, and we'll get into exactly what that does, but it stores and it tracks that data for every person who drives by one of these cameras, or every vehicle. And so these cameras take a still image of every vehicle that passes by, and it's video. So there is video, but as far as what's recorded, what my understanding what's recorded is a still image of the rear of the vehicle. And they call them license plate readers, but they're a lot more than just license plate readers. So you can take your license plate off, you can put a different license plate, and they would still recognize your vehicle because they take what Flock calls a digital vehicle fingerprint, and
Wow.
that looks at that looks at the color, the make, the model. It can discern and approximate the year of your vehicle. It looks at any modifications that you've made to that vehicle,
Wow.
any bumper stickers, any damage on that vehicle, and it can use any of those. So if there's from a law enforcement perspective, if there's a witness that didn't get the license plate, but they say, well, it's a red BMW, whatever, and it had a dent in the rear quarter panel, they could look for that using AI within this software that they subscribe to. They could do a search for that vehicle, and they could find that vehicle. They could find each of the cameras that it passed by at what time, and they could estimate its actual location currently based on that. So, from a law enforcement perspective, it is definitely a useful tool. And I have utmost respect for Sheriff McKenna. I think he's doing a fantastic job of enforcing our laws, and he's done a great job of protecting our liberties in the past, especially during COVID. And I think he's a hero for that. But I fundamentally disagree with him. I agree with him that actually this would be a game changer. He says that word often. But the problem is that we don't have control over that data and where that data goes.
So, first off, when you describe it, it sounds kind of like the efficient or equivalent of like facial recognition. Like it's that level of technology. Like it's not just getting a couple of letters and numbers. It's really going to really accurately zero in on your automobile. And I have heard a lot about this debate of who's in control of the data, and I don't see how there could be any argument about that. Like you said, we are renting and leasing software property, and at the end of the day, it's going to be stored, that information, on their servers, right? So like, well, theoretically it might be our data that they're not going to be using. I think we all know how that kind of goes, right? When you just talk around your phone and next thing you know, there's a Nike ad.
Yep.
It seems like a pretty slippery slope is.
Well, and that's really, really a good point. And that's where my focus was at the last commission meeting. There were two Flock salesmen there, and the Flock salesman went through this shiny presentation. And he had this full PowerPoint presentation, and repeatedly he said, Flock does not sell customer data. But the problem is in the contract.
Yeah.
There's three very massive loopholes for that, where and I view it actually as a form of like legal gaslighting. So it's true that they cannot sell customer data, but the way that they define customer data is it excludes raw data. So the raw data is the actual pictures. Like that's
Right,
everything. So
right.
everything
Yeah.
that the customer that
Right,
is the customer data comes from the
right.
raw data. So
It's
it
everything that you
excludes
would need to take the
100%.
next step. Yeah.
Exactly. And so so it excludes the raw data, and it includes that raw data, that raw data, and any derivatives of that raw data are included in their IP definition and their intellectual property definition. They own all the rights to that, and they can do whatever they want with it.
Right.
And then there's another clause in the contract that says that they have the right to share this information with other agencies anytime it has that flock itself has a good faith belief, and those are the exact words, that's the threshold that they set, which can be defined as anything.
Sure.
Anytime they believe they have a good faith belief that there's a legal or law enforcement reason to do so.
Yeah.
And it's a privately held company. So we have no way of knowing as citizens what they're actually doing with that data. They tell us we do not sell customer data, but by the definition set forth in the contract, they have every right to give away the raw data.
Yeah. I
And
mean, just
and
because they
and
don't
who
now
knows that we
doesn't mean
don't.
they
Like,
won't.
right, right. And there's zero, there is absolutely zero um, mechanism in legal mechanism in their contract for us to do any sort of third party audit on what actually is done with our data and where it goes. And so it could go, and they did say that they store this data at an Amazon Web Service server that's at the same location as multiple agencies, including the NSA.
Yeah.
And the NSA contracts with Amazon Web Services. And if a future, say, if the president, whether it's President Trump or a future president, were to say, well, we have a law enforcement reason, this is a matter of national security to monitor, say there's another 9/11 type event or something, or they say that, there's an armed rebellion or who knows what might come in the future.
Sure.
And he says that the president says there's a national security reason to monitor this data and to make sure that the NSA is monitoring this data. All he has to do is say so, and
Yeah.
and Amazon Web Services already agreed, according to their contract, to provide any data on any company that is serviced, with AWS. And so even the contract itself, even if it did protect us as citizens, it still wouldn't even matter because the NSA could still get it.
That
So
second
it's a
clause,
really deep, there's a lot to it. So
yeah, that clause you referred to, that second one in particular, I think was the one that I heard of that made it like so that there was this allowance for interpretation at a level well beyond anything that we would have locally. That
sure.
just sort of they sneak in there and pretty much makes it clear that they can and will use it for whatever they choose to use it for. Because you get into pretty, yeah, I mean, you get into semantics pretty quick. And
Yes.
like you say, if the president, it could be like, for example, what's happening in Minneapolis, right? If there were something like that happening, next thing you know, that might be enough. And they're looking at all the information. Um, what I find fascinating about this, and so I kind of have two questions, is first off, we have a very conservative community and a conservative commission, as far as I understand. So normally, more conservative communities and lawmaking bodies get on board with law enforcement. And you did say you think very highly of the sheriff. So just having made that observation, which maybe is as much an observation as a question, I'm curious, has the sheriff himself spoken to the concerns that you just expressed? Why does he not, like, I get in his position how useful this tool is. Nevertheless, does he talk about these concerns?
Yeah, that's another great question. So he held a meeting, or the Tea Party actually held a meeting, the Lapeer County Tea Party, that he came to, and he talked for about an hour and a half about, basically giving his pitch and laying out his rationale for wanting this. And it's primarily what it really boils down to is it is a powerful law enforcement tool. And so where he lands with this, and he says what is driving him is that he believes that he was elected to keep us safe, and that this is needed to keep us safe.
Okay.
And so that's his view. I met with him last week. We talked for about an hour and a half, and I was pleading with him to just uh, to just uh, cancel his request and remove his request for this, withdraw it. He may do that. I mean, to his
Okay.
credit, he did. He heard me,
Okay.
And I wouldn't have expected him to just change his mind. He's been in communication with Flock's sales team and all of this for almost a year now.
Okay.
And so he's dug pretty deeply into it. I mean, he sees the benefits as far as to law enforcement. And I agree with him. And where I disagree is that, and I told him this, is that I believe that the sheriff, according to our Constitution, is the highest executive authority in the land of Lapeer County. And as such, his job is not just to keep us safe, because no one can keep us safe. Like, that's just not God alone can do that. That's not what that's really not even the purpose of law enforcement. The purpose of law enforcement is to identify criminals and to try to and ensure that our laws are being applied fairly and accurately in identifying and removing criminals from the street. But that includes our government. And so there's a balance between safety and liberty. And so we elect the sheriff to carefully and humbly and prayerfully figure out where that balance is between liberty and safety, and strive to run that balance. And he did that exceptionally well in COVID. He told the state police, and he just flat out said, we're not going to enforce these edicts,
Yep.
the COVID edicts here in this
Yep.
county. And like I said, he's a hero for doing that. And he said at the Tea Party meeting that he would do that again and that we could trust him. Well, the problem is that if this flock camera system had existed at that time, the Michigan State Police would have had access to our movement patterns, and he would have been powerless to stop them from enforcing those edicts.
Sure.
So, so yeah, I think that, and that's where I still really pray that he sees that this is so important to the community, that and that there really is this important and vital function of protecting our liberties and protecting us from our own government
Yeah.
that we've elected him to do.
Yeah. I can see it's a tough thing for him to potentially have to weigh out. I wouldn't necessarily want to be in his position. I think the community, at least if you judge by social media, and I heard maybe around a dozen, somewhere like 14 people spoke out at the meeting against these cameras.
Mhm.
We're going to see this whole thing maybe play out again at the city level.
Mhm.
And again, if you just gauge social media, it seems people around here, by and large, don't want these cameras. Um, I know Commissioner Hagedorn a little bit, and I'm aware of the fact that he's come out against them. But
Mhm.
it also looks like it's pretty close right now. Like it looks to me, if I'm not mistaken, by a 4-3 vote, you kind of kick the can down the road to the next meeting. Is that about where we're at as far as the county weighing in on this matter once and for all?
That's certainly what happened at the last meeting.
Okay.
And it was three of us. It was me and Kevin Isley and Brad, that all said, hey, we're indicated that we're ready to vote this down today. And but there were four commissioners that said that tabled it. And now I don't know where they're going to go. I mean, we haven't had any open meetings law
I
dictates
understand.
it,
Yeah.
and we
You
haven't
can't.
had any meetings outside of what the public has seen. So what you've seen is the same thing what you know is the same thing that I know,
Okay.
and what you can surmise based on what you saw in the other commissioners, and their vote is, or their potential vote is the same thing that I could surmise. And so it does appear that it's very close. And I think that the best thing that anyone could do is contact their commissioner and all of the commissioners, and
Yeah.
just politely and courteously and respectfully tell them that you oppose this, and perhaps you can say why, and even just whether it's a mailed in letter, an email to the commission, that would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Because and if you can go to the next two commission meetings, uh, so a week from Thursday, a week from this Thursday, and then the 26th is when we're going to be deciding this.
Oh,
26th
the
of February.
26th. So I do intend to try to organize just a live stream on my platform and solicit calls and just get the community engaged. I'm trying to pick a time uh, so that I can promote it a little bit to get as many voices crammed into that show as I can.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll be heard some
Mhm.
kind of way. So why is it that it'll be decided not at the next meeting, but the one after? And then also, I want to backtrack a little bit and tell me about what they're supposed to be used for. What is, you have described them as like a very, very powerful tool, but what I read is they make it sound like you might get a ticket because of it type thing, or um, it's kind of minimized as far
Sure.
as what it's supposed to be used for.
Yeah. So they don't track speed. They don't do any of that. So it's not like a photo radar thing, or it's
So no
nothing like that.
speeding ticket.
Right. So it's none of that. I've seen people say, like I saw one person say, "Well, I hope they put one in front of my house so they could catch all the speeders." No, that's not what it does.
It's not.
Um, but what it does really is it tracks and it stores, and I've also heard people say, including the sheriff, that it's like hiring additional deputies to just go out and watch what's happening in the community. But I don't think that that's accurate, because the thing about human beings that are trained as law enforcement agents or officers, and they are, um, you know, they're out there doing the job of trying to enforce our laws. No human being has perfect memory. Far from it. In fact, most of the vehicles that go by, a lot of law enforcement officers are just going to ignore, because they don't have that, they can't remember everybody. And
Sure.
and so they're only going to look where they have probable cause to look. And
Mhm.
that's the way the law is. That's the whole
Designed to work. Yeah.
purpose of the Fourth Amendment, which is
Yeah.
the protecting us against unreasonable searches and seizures. And so, what this does is it stores our information. So every time, Timothy, that you drive by one of these cameras, it'll take a picture of the back of your vehicle, whatever vehicle you're driving, um, and it'll store that picture, and it'll store the time and the date and everything else.
Wow.
And it'll store that information when you pass by each of these cameras for, it says, 30 days. That doesn't mean that other law enforcement agencies that have access to this data, or even Flock itself, might store it for longer than that. I don't know. I mean, there's no way that we could know.
Yeah.
There's no protection that we would have against that. It could be stored indefinitely. It might not. They say 30 days, but they also say we will not sell customer data, but within their own contract, they say that they can give it away. So, it's, so, and they made other materially false or misleading statements in their presentation as well. So I don't trust them to just tell the truth about what it is that they're doing. Um, but yeah, so it takes these images, it stores all of this data, and then the dangerous part is that when it stores it, is that it applies AI to it, so that you can do text searches within the system, and you can find a vehicle that matches any description that you give it, or partial description. You could come up with a list of all of the bumper stickers that have Trump stickers, or all the vehicles that have Trump stickers, or all the vehicles that have Bernie Sanders stickers, or whatever. It doesn't. This isn't a right or left thing, but it can be used that way. It can also be used by, a malintentioned kind of rogue police officer. Now, it would be legal for them to do this, but that doesn't mean that it hasn't already happened in this county, and in many other counties, where law enforcement tools are misused for personal reasons by, to spy on an ex, or girlfriend, or whatever. And that
Right.
can happen, and it does happen, and it has happened. So, it has happened with Flock, where they've used that in that way.
Are
So,
you? Go ahead.
no, that's in a nutshell. I think that's pretty much what it does. It's this ability to store it, and then you can zoom into the images, and if the image does, they're able to see the greater context of what else is around there.
Mhm.
So it could, passersby on foot. It could be, if there's anything else that might be suspicious within the frame of the image that law enforcement might want to have an image of a house in the background, for example,
Mhm.
which is very likely,
Yeah.
something that's going on in the background, then any of that can be captured as well and can be zoomed into and grabbed. Now, you did mention, I do want to address this. You did mention facial recognition. They insist that they don't do facial recognition, but they do have a patent on a technology that would do facial recognition and even to identify passengers and drivers based on race, gender, and all of that. So that doesn't mean that they're using that, but it also that what would prevent any other federal law enforcement agency or the state police from applying facial recognition software onto the data that they're grabbing from Flock. So
Yeah. So I'll make a point, before we close about kind of the my thoughts on this, but are you aware of any like local nearby communities that have kind of already played this fight out, and whether or not like who around us has it, who around us rejected it, like any in our somewhat immediate vicinity?
yes, uh, so Ferndale, Michigan, they just in the last couple months they voted to remove all of their cameras. They had them and
Oh,
they
wow.
voted to remove them.
Oh,
Uh,
they had them and removed them.
yes,
Wow.
and Oakland County has them pretty much throughout the county, except for Ferndale now. But countywide, the sheriff has them, and um, in Genesee County, they started with I think I don't know how many they started with. It was probably similar to us. Now they have like 200 or more,
Yeah.
and there is now a movement to get them removed. And it looks like they may end up voting to remove them
Yeah.
in Genesee County. So
Wow.
and that really illustrates how slippery a slope this is.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to Sheriff McKenna, I asked him, one of the things I asked him is, so are there any crimes that are unsolved that this would have solved of the last year or longer? And he mentioned one crime where there was a pedestrian that was a hit and run and it was a
I,
fatality.
I think I
And
just interviewed his aunt.
okay, that was Brendan Carr, I believe. And
Yeah. Uh,
uh,
Morgan, maybe?
or yeah, that's what, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
And that was on a rural road in Columbiaville. He was walking home, he was hit. And I asked him, would there be a camera there? He said, well, no.
Probably not.
So, I mean, okay, so that it probably wouldn't have solved it unless, that's kind of saying, once it's in, then, who knows? He could come back to us with another proposal saying, this is really a fantastic tool, but we just need more. And
Yes.
that's exactly what happened in a very short period of time with Genesee County.
Yeah.
And so I think that they wanted to, from what I understand, they wanted to install more, and they said, no, let's kind of hit the brakes on this. And it's it's reached a place where if you drive through Genesee County, you got to know you're going to be filmed. They're going to know where you're going, how often you're going there, all that kind of stuff. Um, so that's Genesee County. I believe Bay City also removed them, had them and removed them. There's 25 cities or municipalities in the last year across the country that have had them and removed them.
Yeah. Wow.
Flock said that their salesman said, but there have been 900 new ones. Um, but there's 25 that had them that lived with this, and the residents, they finally listened to their residents and said, okay, we're gonna do the will of the people.
Yeah.
And so overwhelmingly, Democrat and Republican, there is strong opposition. So far, everyone that's spoken to the commission has opposed it. At the event that McKenna went to at the Tea Party event, it was unanimous. Everyone that spoke was against it. Nobody spoke in favor of it.
Yeah.
And I have yet to talk to somebody. I've seen comments, for example, well, if you're not breaking the law, then what's the problem? And I would say that if you really understand what our Constitution is about, and that the purpose of our Constitution and the purpose of the Bill of Rights even is to protect us from our own government, because there is no good government on earth. It
No.
just doesn't exist.
Right.
The best government, the best we could possibly hope for in government is one that strives to protect us from itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you answered that very question. So very glad because I would have kicked myself for not slipping it in. What do you say to the people who make that comment? Well, if you're not breaking the law, you have nothing to worry about. I That is one that I've seen out there quite a bit, and I was going to throw your way. So thank you for addressing that. I
You're
think
welcome.
it is certainly illuminating to see that there are communities who have had it, been there, done that, and now are in the process or have already removed them. Um, I think what concerns me, and you've already addressed this so many ways, but I'll make my comment and then let you kind of take us home. But it just seems like we are laying the initial infrastructure for that police state by doing this, that no matter what they are saying to us about what they will and won't do, uh, if you look to China, they have a social currency system. If you cross the street, or I should say, if you jaywalk, you lose points. Or not, I can't say that I'm an expert on the ins and outs of how it works, but the very fact that it exists is terrifying. And like you say, they might start with 24, then we go to 48. They might not have facial recognition in the beginning, but all that takes is a software or equipment upgrade, and then we do. What happens with AI as it only gets stronger? I mean, hell, we might have Terminator 2 using this against us, right? There's really no telling where this could go. So um, that, in a nutshell, would be my concern, and I think it's the concern that I'm hearing from the majority of the people. Just yeah, having said that, anything that you kind of want to say in closing to the community, I'd appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Um, any final thoughts on this matter?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Timothy. And I think everything that you just said is exactly what I would encourage anyone who is tempted to think, okay, well, you know, I do nothing wrong. It doesn't bother me. If it gets some criminals off the street, then it's worth it. If it gets, somebody with dementia that goes for a midnight drive, if it helps bring them home faster, then it's worth it. Okay. I would just encourage to, go back and listen to what you just said, Timothy, because if we consider that this is a brand new company, I mean, this company just started just a few years ago. It's already a $7 billion private company. It's not publicly traded. There's no way that we can look into their books. There's like there's zero transparency, and they already have intellectual property that could be implemented to do facial recognition, and to do far more. It's coming. The next generation of this, I'm sure, is going to be pan, tilt, zoom, getting into vehicles.
Right.
And then the next step is looking into the vehicles. If they can see a firearm, or if they can see a bag that looks suspicious or something like that, then all of a sudden they're looking into every single vehicle, looking for probable cause.
Hmm.
And this is why our privacy is just so important, because then the likelihood of something being misinterpreted. We have a fantastic sheriff now who does recognize the importance of our liberties. He's not somebody that's going to go after anybody just for things that aren't significant. I mean, he really does seek to faithfully apply the law, and protect us, and he's great. But and I don't believe that that he's a corrupt sheriff. I think he's really who he says he is. But that doesn't mean that the next guy that comes along isn't going to be.
Right.
And or that the one before him wasn't. And so and so there's a we really do. This is a very slippery slope. And I think it's a dangerous thing to, once it gets in. Commissioner Nisley said at the last meeting, he says it's like letting the camel's nose into the tent. The
Yeah.
next thing is the whole camel's in there, and the next thing there's no more tent. And so it can happen very quickly, especially with the acceleration and the advancement of, like you said, AI and the technology and the capability. When the
Yeah.
capability is there, people are going to want to use it.
Absolutely.
And it can be hacked, especially on the user level. And local governments have a real challenge. And I see this, I'm the chairman of the IT committee within the county. And so there is a real problem with, with just a threat of bad actors wanting to hack into local government for all kinds of nefarious purposes. And so, all it takes is getting one sheriff department users access, and who knows what country could be doing this. I've heard that on Russian hacking sites, there's, logins for sale. And whether or not that's true, I'm not sure. I'm not a hacker. I
It's
don't,
not far-fetched.
but yeah, no, it's not far-fetched. And so there's a lot of reasons to be concerned. And when I look at the pros and cons, the cons just massively outweigh the pros. So
Okay. Well, I appreciate you trying to help us keep the genie in the bottle on this one. I try not to editorialize a whole lot, but I think I'm in your camp on this. So regardless of that, I just appreciate you coming on and telling us what you think. I saw you made that very public post and felt very strongly about it. So whenever a commissioner or any of our governmental leaders does that, I take note of it because it's not every day that you see that. So I thought it was a good opportunity to really get a beat on this whole situation. And so thank you so much for coming on the show, Commissioner Scott McMahan. Thanks again.
thank you so much for all the good work that you're doing, Timothy. I appreciate
I
it.
appreciate it.
Informing the community. It's really important.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
All right, you too.